In case you missed it, you're allowed to be hot, smart, and rich. So let's get into it. Gab Waller, are you ready to get hot, smart, rich?
I am so ready.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay, well, thank you first of all for coming. I feel super honored. I think when I was prepping for this, I was like, Gab Waller is kind of like the Carrie Bradshaw of our generation in terms of your Vogue column. But now you're like an entrepreneur. You are an AI tech founder. You are like a style guru and source of making celebrities look and feel their best. Which one do you resonate with the most?
Great question. I would say that I feel the most comfortable with entrepreneur.
Okay, so
The business
growing
side.
up, did you want to be an entrepreneur? Did you want to be in fashion? Or why do you feel like that feels better for you?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So growing up, I had no interest in fashion. It wasn't even, I came from a really small town in Australia, a very country town.
Okay.
So it wasn't even the horizon or like a possibility for me growing up. So I feel once I graduated school, it's a bit of a crazy story of what I went into, but I started working in the government. Once I was like making some good money from this government job, I started taking an interest in fashion. And I was like,
On a personal level.
on a personal level, yes. I just started, I remember my first purchase and I was like, wait, I've always felt very naturally drawn to style. Like it's always come quite naturally to me. So then I remember even working in the government, like going into my little corporate job and they're like, Gab, you need to be in fashion. Like, look, what are you doing right
Yeah.
now? Look how you're dressed. And I'm like, yes, I know. And so I finally took the leap and went
So when
for
you
it.
took the leap and went into fashion, what was that first job that you had? Or did you just start your business right away?
I remember I dabbled in internships initially because I think I was like, yes, fashion is for me, but I didn't know what area. I was like, do I want to be a buyer? Do I want to be a stylist? Do I want to work in PR? So I went down the internship route, and at the end of that, I kind of landed on styling. But fast forward a certain amount of time, that's when I kind of was like, I want to do something different. I want to do something in the fashion space that nobody else is doing.
Yeah.
And that's where sourcing came from.
Yeah. I would say like that's something I didn't even know what fashion sourcing was before you. And it's so funny when I was first getting to know you, I was like, I kind of was like, is it styling? Like, what is it? So when you were like, I'm going to do something different, I'm going to do fashion sourcing, you were like the pioneer of that. How did you even like think that that was a career you could make for yourself?
Yeah, so I was living in Sydney in Australia and I never called it sourcing to begin with. I remember I found one of my old email signatures the other day and it was like luxury personal buyer.
Love
And
that.
yes,
Okay.
right? So
You're a
I-
branding
I-
queen.
Yeah. So she started as a little luxury personal buyer, but the original concept stemmed from the research that I did. I knew that Australia tended to get collections much later than the rest of the world. And if they did get them, or when they did get them, the quantities were so limited that they tended to sell out so quickly. So the original light bulb moment was, I wonder if I can, didn't use the word source, but I wonder if I can purchase pieces internationally for the Australian market. And then 3 months in, I knew that I was onto something. Like I was like, there is demand here for this. And then 6 months is when like the Rosie Huntington Whiteley story happened, and it was like,
Okay, wait, I don't know the Rosie Huntington Whiteley story. Tell me this.
yeah, so this is like such a pivotal moment in my career. But 6 months into the business, I predominantly had Australian clients, and I think I was sitting on like 1,000 Instagram followers. And I wasn't established in the fashion industry, even in Australia. So me approaching clients back then, I was a complete stranger to everyone. So I was kind of finding my feet, but I was posting on my personal Instagram what I was doing. Like, I've just found my client this. I knew that I was onto something. And I remember like I often weirdly go back to my old Instagram stories to see.
Wow.
Yeah, like just refresh, like, wow, that's really how it started. And that
Yeah.
was the original post. But it really goes to show, like, whatever you're starting, just post it, because
Yeah.
there was a girl that followed me. And well, if I backtrack a little bit, Rosie posted a Instagram story saying like, I'm dying for this Celine coat. Can anyone find this coat? And I saw that and I was like, I know I can get her that coat. I know the boutique that has it, but I have no way of
Reaching out to her,
Rosie.
yeah.
So I let it slide. But a week later, a girl that followed me messaged me and she's like, hey, I've been following what you're doing. I think this is something you can help with. I'm chatting with Rosie. Can you help? And I was like, yes, I can. And so when it arrived with Rosie, she like did a full Instagram story saying, you remember when I was looking for the code, this girl in Australia found it. And then she also did like an in-feed post. And that just like, it's not overnight explosion because there was so much leading up to that point, but it was certainly the moment that changed like my career and definitely my life.
And that was how long after you had started this business?
That was 6 months.
6 months. And
Yes.
so was it like a struggle for the first 6 months? So of like, even like, did you go and get the bags or the shoes or the coats first and then try to find customers for it? Or was it like you had a client, they're like, Gab, I want this?
It was definitely a struggle. I think for me, two parts of it. Number one was just proving myself. It was a new concept. So I think for me, I from day one, I was always like, I can find you pieces internationally. I can get pieces that you can't get your hands on. So that was always kind of the messaging. But I remember in the beginning, I think Sydney, I always think back to my story, and I am very grateful that I started in a country such as Australia. I think that, starting in a smaller market, it helped in the beginning as opposed to like starting in, say, the US. But the main challenge was I wasn't a VIP client myself. I didn't really buy luxury. So I was walking into like Dior, Louis Vuitton, whoever it may have been, and said, hey, can I have, like, you don't know me, I'm a stranger, but can I have your most requested or like most in demand piece? And there was so much, no, I don't know who you are. So that kind of, in those early days, like there was a lot of that rejection and me just having to be like, no, I know I'm onto something.
Yeah.
I know I'm worth your while. I think that's what I really wanted to showcase to these like sales assistants and to these brands, that I'm building the clientele. And I think I did a lot of research prior to even launching Gab Waller as to like who was my target market, and then reached out to them that way. So kind of within launching, I already had like good clients that were spending pretty heavily, even though there was, say, like 10 at that time.
Yeah. It's such a common thing. I feel this all the time. Like when I try to explain to people HSR that just don't get it, and I'm like, I know I'm onto something, you just don't see it yet. It's one of those like really frustrating things where you're like, how do I communicate that I'm of value, that you should pay attention to me, no matter what business you're starting or what kind of guardrail you're up against? How do you convince people when you were starting and you didn't have what you have now to take you seriously and to give you their most in-demand piece when they have no idea who you are?
Yeah, really great question. I think it does come back to relationships and like being genuine and kind can go so far. I think, in the luxury world, it is common that it can get a little bit demanding of, I have the money, so I want the item. But me coming in from a much like kinder approach, I felt that really just helped establishing it. So to me, I've always been like, let's look at this as a friendship. And then I think that's kind of how I was able to at least get my foot in the door.
Yeah.
Just being
We need to talk about money for a second, because I was going to say this till later, but you said something really interesting that's like, being in the luxury space, I have the money, I deserve this. You're around extremely wealthy people. These are the people that can afford what you're doing. What would you say are some of like the similar characteristics of people that have achieved that level of success in terms of their personality or how they think about money?
My clients, for me, that consumer, they want things quickly. Sourcing is all about speed.
Yeah.
And so I think on that is why fashion sourcing as a whole has grown so much as an industry, because essentially these consumers, they want it quickly. They don't have the time to find it. The fact that they can just DM someone and say, get it for me, it's done deal. They're not lining up at the boutiques. They're certainly not doing that. And so that's what some of the boutiques are doing these days. There's a line out the front. Like they're absolutely not putting up with that at all.
No.
So the fact that it is very social and social commerce, they can just DM someone and be like, this is what I want. Like that is how they are wanting to shop and how they're wanting to spend their money. I think it's really just about, of course, there is a, personalization and relationship element to it.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, they just want it the quickest way possible.
Yeah.
With the most amount of time spent from their end.
Yeah. You're also really good with your money, though, because one of the things I've always really admired about you is like you own now 2 properties, one in Australia and one in LA.
Yes.
And how old are you?
I'm 30.
You're 30. So you own 2 properties at 30. That's super rare. Walk us through your relationship with money, because we often hear entrepreneurs are investing into their businesses. You've been able to invest into your closet, your wardrobe, and your real estate empire and your business all at once, it feels like. So what has your relationship with money been like from when you were younger to where it is now?
I love this question. If I was to go, I certainly didn't grow up with money for anything of any kind. I grew up in a very, just a very middle class family, if you would say that, but back in a country town in Australia. So I've always known from a young age I need to work for my money.
Yeah.
So this is actually, oh my gosh, this is going to be funny. My nickname in high school was Gabby Gabby.
Why?
Because I'm so tight with my money. And still to this day, like I am very cautious. I'm the opposite of an impulse. Like I will really need to think out any purchase, and I hate spending money on silly things.
Yeah.
So if it means that like I can save $5 here and there on whatever it may be, like standard shipping versus express, whatever, like trying to use it a good example, like I will.
Or if you can pay for valet or you'll park for free, you're parking for free.
That's it.
Okay.
Yes. So it's those little things add up.
Yeah.
So I still feel like I have that mentality. And in a way, like I think because I didn't come from money, I still am very tight with it, because maybe there's a part of me that's always like, what if this disappeared what if I don't have this? I want to hold on to it. So
Yeah.
I'm a very smart spender.
Yeah.
And even with my luxury purchases and my wardrobe, I will think it through. I'm all about investment dressing. So I talk about cost per wear a lot. Like if I'm purchasing a piece, I want to ensure that I get my wear out of that piece as opposed to just wearing it once and it's gone. So that's kind of my personal approach. And then in terms of business, like it is a business in terms of Gab Waller as a whole. It's a very low overheads. It's always been that way. We don't hold stock. We're a service-based business.
So you guys take a commission basically for each thing that you're sourcing.
That's it. Yes.
Are you able to share what the commission is?
Yes, it's our flat rate, and we do $220 USD for anything under 5,000 and $350 for anything over that. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's very volume driven business because we are sourcing so much. So the reason why I've opted for flat rate as opposed to doing like a percentage is it encourages clients to come back for more. There are clients requesting daily, weekly, monthly, as opposed if you did offer say like a 10% commission, clients, we may only hear from them every 6 months or so when they like desperately want the XYZ bag. So that's kind of why we went the flat rate approach.
Did you ever A/B test that to know like that's the way that you should do it? Because if you did a commission that was like a consumer behavior, they're not coming back.
I never did any testing, to be honest. I've always had flat rate from the day I launched. And I remember even when I launched, it was pretty low. But I've always known that I'm quantity focused. I'm high volume. So and the reason for that, especially in the early days, is I wanted like word of mouth is truly how my business has been built.
Yeah.
So if it means that I offered like a lower sourcing fee at the beginning, it means that more sales are converting, more clients are going to be talking about me. So that's kind of how I've always had that approach, as opposed to to me, I just know that if it is commission, it's higher price for the client. And I still have that mentality of like, I want the best price for my client.
Yeah.
So.
You mentioned cost per wear versus ROI, and I really want to talk about this because I feel like there's a misconception on TikTok. I see a girl buy like a Prada bag and she's like an amazing investment piece. Yes. And what I've been trained to think is like cost per wear is, okay, if it is not going to give me money back after what I've already paid, if I want to sell it, I'm not going to make money on this item. That is a cost per wear item versus an ROI. Mm-hmm. So can you walk us through your mentality as it relates to cost per wear versus an ROI of a luxury piece?
Yes. So cost per wear, I think of the amount of times that I am going to wear that piece. So say, for example, it's $1,000. I'm going to wear it 50 times over a particular year. I will do that calculation and be like, okay, it equals XYZ.
Girl math.
Yeah. That basic 101. That's it. In terms of the return on investment, that's where you look at pieces that really hold their value. There's high demand on them. Hermes is a great example of that. You know that if you're purchasing a Birkin or a Cali bag, you are getting your ROI absolutely guaranteed. But it's not to say that there is, I've seen that even with, Miu Miu pieces. There's a crochet pouch that's really took over this year, and like the resale price on that is so high because it is such a demand, like in demand piece. So I think it is ROI is really, it's hard to track, I think, for the consumer side, because unless it is like the Birkin or Kelly, like some consumers may not know how much in demand one particular style is. And I think too, it is risky also because I've seen firsthand, I see it every day, how quickly these pieces are the piece of the moment, and a week later nobody wants it. So
I know that was going to be like my one question to you and how you think about money, because I'm a very like ROI driven finance person, right? And so like for me, buying luxury feels like still so scary because I'm like, what if this goes out of season or this isn't on trend anymore? And I think I really want to understand how you've thought about building a portfolio of things where you're like, you haven't just spent on luxury, you haven't just spent on real estate, you haven't just spent on a business. Like you've really had this like really balanced portfolio approach to building a career and a life for yourself. And I really want to try to figure out like, how did you know how to do that? Or like, why have you done it that way?
I definitely think for me, I mean, the classic, what's the saying? I think it's of Sex and the City, where it's like, I want to see my money hanging
In your closet.
in the
Yeah.
closet. Yeah. So like that to me is something that I do physically like to see my money, my hard work.
Yeah.
So I like possessions for that. So the houses, my properties are are an example of that, where it's like I work so hard. I need a physical item. And of course, like, there's investing and everything like that, like, that is a different side, but I do have that approach. Like I like to physically see it.
I love
like
that.
to say that I own it. And I think I'm also like a super visual person, so I
Yeah.
think that helps me mentally to say like, that's mine, it's there. I
Yeah.
can touch it, I can feel
Feel
it, I
it,
can
yeah.
see it. And the same with my wardrobe. Like my wardrobe, it's like it's like my baby. Like I look after it so well. It's immaculately displayed, but I look after everything with like dry cleaning and storing it. And of course, one day I'd love to be able to hand it down to a little daughter if she
Yeah.
comes along. But it is something that I think that's my approach. Like I like that wide portfolio,
Yeah.
because I like to physically see it.
What would you say are the best pieces that were an investment that are like a true, even if it's a cost per wear, like what are the
Yes.
best things that you've purchased over the last year? And what were you like, I really wish I didn't purchase that?
So for me, I'm going to say the best pieces that I've purchased, there's 3 brands that I'm pretty heavily focused on, because they have no logos. So it is something that is so chic and elegant that you can just wear over and over and over again. So the row is, of course, has to be a big one. And you also talk like, yes, it is luxury, it is priced higher, but the quality is there. I like paying for quality, because of course, if you want longevity to your pieces, you do need to make that investment into the highest quality pieces. And I'm a big believer in that. So I think the Row, Kate, and Totem are 3 brands that anytime I spend on them, I know that that's a solid purchase. Like I'm always going to be wearing those pieces. Even this dress now, Totem, I'm going to wear this a million
So
more
many times, yeah.
It's unbelievable. So that's that. And I think in terms of regretful purchases, I have held on to them, because I'm also a big believer in everything comes back around.
Totally.
So pieces that, were in the early 2000s, like everything comes back around. So I surprisingly don't sell many of my pieces. I tend to hold on to, but again, that you may think, oh my goodness, she has so much, but because I am a very calculated purchaser, like I don't purchase a lot. I just purchase key pieces that like, that will
hold its value.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So I think, for me, maybe my regretful purchase, I think back when I started Gabwala, I did fall into the trap of, oh, because everyone wants this piece, like I want it too. It's trending, it's popular, it's an in-demand piece. Like it makes most sense for me to have it also. But then I remember there was a Balmain top, funnily enough, and I put it on. I was like, I feel so uncomfortable in this. This is not my style at all. And so I had to teach myself, like, Gab, just because it's trending, just because it's popular, just because everyone wants it, doesn't mean it's your style, and doesn't mean that you need to have it as well.
That's such a good lesson. And I think it's actually so true when we talk about your entrepreneurship journey, because one of the things people always ask me is like, what separates a successful entrepreneur from somebody that, tries and it's just not working out? And I think one of the biggest things is focus, and really making sure that you're like doing a job really well, and making sure that you're not trying to do too much.
Yes.
when you're juggling so much, you now have how many people that work for you?
There's only 2 full-timers.
Okay. But you have
Yes.
freelance people?
I do. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'm also on content.
Yeah.
And then my sourcing assistants that are kind of based all around the world. Yes.
How do you feel like you're managing your day? Because like I said at the beginning of this podcast, you're now obviously you have your own personal brand, which I want to talk about a little later. You obviously have Gab Waller, the business. You then
Yes.
have Source By, which we'll talk about a little bit too. Like, how are you managing it all?
Yeah. So best decision I've ever made is probably about 8 months ago. I hired a general manager for Gabwilla.
Okay.
She is based in Australia, but she hands down best hire I've ever done because I think people may be surprised to hear this, but up until like even January this year, I was still so heavily involved in the day-to-day of Gabwilla.
Okay. Sourcing,
Chatting to clients, posting on the socials, like you name it, I was doing it. And it got to that point that I was like, it's 6 years now. It's time for me to kind of step back and be able to really allocate my time elsewhere. And so she was one of my sources, and she was in Australia, and she had over time put her hand up to say, like, if there's anything else you need, like, you let me know. And I was like, amazing. I definitely will. And then when it came time to be like, I want to hire a general manager. I want someone to run the day-to-day of this company. And it was a no-brainer that she was the one. So that has been fantastic. So at present, Gabwiller as a company is the one that I spend the least amount of time on, which is very surprising and very new for me also.
Yeah.
But I just feel that it's great that it is in such a strong position that I can really pull back on that. But essentially how my day is at present, about the first 2 hours of my day, Gabwiller work. So I catch up on everything that's happened overnight, catch up on messages, kind of touch base, what orders have come through. I still like to be hands-on sales because of course, like, that's the profit. And then the rest of my day is sourced by. I'm surprisingly a lot more active on my personal Instagram now.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of leaning into, like you said, the personal brand and the importance of that.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about because you and I have talked about this offline, but you made a very specific decision to brand Gab Waller as like your company and then also your personal brand where you have 2 separate Instagrams.
Yes.
So walk me through when you were building the business and were you even thinking about building a brand at that point? Like a personal brand, sorry?
I wasn't. No. So going back, I remember I started a separate account because I was like, I don't want to bother anyone on my personal Instagram with my fashion stuff. So I created a different account, and I think I mentioned this to you in passing offline some time ago. But if I could say one regret in the business journey is calling my company my own name. And that to me is truly just not thinking bigger picture. At the time, my only mission, my goal was I want to work for myself. I want to have a company. I want to work for myself and I'm going to build this by myself. Little did I know what direction it would take, but that's certainly a regret of mine because of course like that I'm so personally attached to it with your name. But that is the reason why I created the 2 accounts initially. And so it wasn't a business decision. It was more me trying to be like, I don't want to annoy anyone.
I think there's a way you can still, and I think that's what's so hard when everyone's like, how do I build a personal brand? I'm like, it's so different for everybody. For me, it was like truly feeling this dichotomy of like wanting to express my sexuality or femininity or like being a young, beautiful girl and then being like, well, I'm not being taken seriously when I'm trying to manage people's money or I'm trying to like build a startup. And so it was this like just frustration of like, why am I not being taken seriously if I want to, like, why can Hailey Bieber post a bikini photo and then have a multi-million-dollar business?
That's a really good point. I like that perspective.
As long as I think you're like, do you feel like you're being honest and transparent about like the highs and the lows of building businesses, or like, is there a part of your life that you want to share that you feel like you're not with your personal brand?
I definitely know that I'm always being authentic. Like what you see, like it's very like happy, bubbly Gab. Like that is my personality.
Yeah.
I think for speaking specifically more for Instagram, because that's really only where I post. I think, I mean, Instagram is a highlight reel. I don't post my struggles, which is something that I think embedded. I am quite a private person. So for me to even post as much, because I feel like I have upped my story.
Totally. Yeah.
And even that, I'm like, I think there is that part of me that like I like to keep a lot of things private, and I think over time I will share more of like any struggles and things like that, especially on the Gab Waller journey. Like I want to be super transparent, and of course with Source By as well.
Yeah.
Because for me, my biggest motivator at this point in my life is just to inspire. I want
Yeah.
to inspire anyone that comes to my page, be like, I can do what she's doing. I can be a fashion sourcer. I can, build this business, whatever it may be. And so if that does mean that I have to, be a little bit more vulnerable, then that might be what it is.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's like, it's so funny because there's never, I think back being 32 and like the regrets I have in my 20s for anybody that's listening to this, it's like, it wasn't the things that I did, it was the things I didn't do.
Yeah.
It was like not posting something or not raising my voice sooner or not doing my newsletter sooner or not even doing this podcast sooner. Like you always have these excuses where you're like, I'll do it eventually. But when I do look back, the last decade, it was a great decade, but there's things that I wish I shared or I wish I talked about because the connection I feel now to people that know my life and know it's not all just one way is so like inherently amazing when your mission is to inspire people that I wonder like with you and building Source By, which I really want to talk about now, identifying as this like AI founder, like how do you feel bringing people along on the journey?
When I sat down even earlier this year and I was like, what do I love doing the most? Like, what is really brings me joy? Because, I signed with IMG, so I was doing, some partnerships and things like that, which I still do. But I'm the happiest when I'm working. I'm the happiest when I am the founder and just building and growing a company.
Yeah.
And if I understand that, there is a responsibility on me to be on my socials. I am a brand, so it's important to post. But in a dream world, all I would do every day is just work. And so I love the idea of being a tech founder. I think for me too, because fashion sourcing, it didn't exist when I started. So like I do feel like I have pioneered this industry. The most natural, organic step for me in this journey would be to introduce tech for our industry. And so that's kind of what excites me. Yeah.
So when you sat down and thought about Source By, walk me through the light bulb moment and like to get to where you are now, because I'm sure a lot of people know who you are, but they might not know that you're now an AI tech founder.
Yes.
So can you just walk us through like what was that moment like and what has it been like since building it?
In March of this year, if I've even go a little bit further back than that, I have little drafts in my notes and even on Miro of over the years me planning out tech that I need to help scale my business. So it's not as if in March of this year I was like, done, this is an idea I have and I'm running with it. It's been little seeds along the journey of goodness, like it kills me. Like we need to scale, we need to grow, but we don't have the ability to do so with the current platforms that we use for this space. So in March of this year is when I sat down with Amir, who we can kind of touch on as my first investor, but I sat down with him. I remember it very vividly. And I just said like, look, I need help. Essentially, I need a solution. I need to build something, because if I don't, we are going to become stagnant. I can't take Gab Waller any further than what it currently is with the current platforms that I use. We've completely outgrown them.
Because you, according to the Vogue business article, you were only able to fulfill 30% of orders that you were getting, right? Or requests?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. So 70% of missed revenue is sitting there. And it kills me because perhaps going back to what we said earlier about sharing the highlights and the lowlights is I naturally post when I post my finds. So people are like, oh, Gab finds everything. She's a miracle worker. And I love that so much. But behind the scenes, there is 70% of requests that I don't find. And there's no other reason than for that I know they exist. My whole belief is that every single item that I receive a request for, it exists somewhere in the world. Yeah. But I do need the assistance of tech to be able to find that, whether that is, sorting the requests, managing the database. That's kind of where what happened in March of that original sit down. And then it was probably like less than a week later that we had another meeting and we hand drew a full initial like brainstorm product memo, which we then created into like a more formal format. And then that kind of started the journey of this is happening. And I later named it SourceBuy, but that was the formation of SourceBuy.
What does SourceBuy actually do?
SourceBuy is an AI automated all-in-one platform that streamlines every aspect of the fashion sourcing process. So if this is something that even I'm still explaining, is what is fashion sourcing. So fashion sourcing is where we receive a request for a specific item, so the client knows exactly what they're looking for. They just need a well-connected expert to find it for them. And it's not just new season luxury. I think that's sometimes an assumption with what I do. It's just she's sourcing, top tier luxury brands. I very often receive requests for previous season pieces. So that's considered pieces that may be 2+ years old. They're not vintage, but they're still definitely not sitting in like new season stock. And of course, vintage pieces also. So anytime a client can't find anything, I think anyone that's listening to this has seen the word sold out at any point while they're shopping online. That's when a consumer would come to a fashion sourcer to find it for them. And so SourceBuy as a whole, it streamlines the entire process from logging the request, but behind the scenes, we use AI to automatically log that request into our database using image and text recognition. And then in there, this ability to search, leveraging AI to help search for the item, because there are times that the pieces are sitting online, but essentially follows that request all the way through to it being found, communicated to the client, clients invoiced, payments received, all in the one platform, because at present we use about 6 different platforms. Yeah.
So it's going to be tech that's used by other fashion sourcers.
That's correct.
Okay.
When we did our branding, so I went through a full brand identity process with a really good agency based here in Los Angeles, but we came up with the term that this is for fashion professionals.
Okay.
So fashion professionals encompasses fashion sources, stylists, and personal shoppers. They are all 3 different industries and 3 different careers. And I think, I can speak not for everyone, but I think we all collectively in our industry, we see ourselves in our niche. So I'm a fashion sourcer. I don't consider myself a stylist, and I don't consider myself a personal shopper. But SourceBuy is for the fashion professional.
Okay. And so where are you at right now in terms of you had those 2 meetings, you kind of sketched everything out, walk us through from that time in March to where you are today.
So basically, we created the product memo, went through the brand identity, but simultaneously to that, it was important for me to have an MVP. And I think couple of parts of that. Number one, I mentioned I'm a visual person, so I really wanted that physical product to be able to showcase the AI at work, but just to really demonstrate this is what we're building. And so we worked with an agency in New York City to develop that and
develop the MVP.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. And full disclaimer, we do own the entire tech. So it was kind of just an initial scope of work that they then handed off to us.
Okay.
And that was fantastic. That was a 6-week project.
Talking about the investment, because this is people think I want to come up with an AI company.
Yes.
It must be hundreds of thousands of dollars. How much did you invest to get an MVP?
So for the MVP, we were initially quoted 68.
Okay.
And we negotiated it down ever so slightly to 55 was
Love
the final
that.
price.
It's really interesting, Gab, because I get a lot of pitch decks, obviously.
Yes.
And yours was so clear and so concise, and it's so simple. It was is it 12 pages? Not even?
Yes, with a few little appendix slides at the end.
But relatively, it's very short, very visual. And I am so impressed because normally when people send me a pitch deck for the first time, I have a ton of feedback or a ton of thoughts. How did you know, for anyone that is listening that wants to start a business and needs to raise money, how did you know how to put this together?
So I am going to say that Amir did help tremendously with what is needed in that document. So essentially what happened is when I was like, okay, great, it's time to go out to raise, I said, what key components as an investor do you want to see in this deck? And so he outlined, the format essentially of, what should be on page 1, what should be on page 2. And credit to Amir, it's actually a funny story. He did attempt to put it together for us, our brand agency, did the design layout, and he kind of was assisting with the content. Yeah. And I was in New York on a trip. It was for my interview with Vogue Business, and because I'm a perfectionist, will admit that.
When's your birthday?
20th of December. I'm a little sad.
So sad? Love.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So he was like, okay, great. It's good to go. And I looked and I said, absolutely not. Like and I got so antsy that I spent my entire flight back redesigning and starting the whole thing from fresh, because I think for me, what he did was fantastic, but I said to him, like, I need people to take me serious, and I need this to be a very, very professional document because I am new in this space. It's like you know, he obviously has seen so many pitch decks as well. And he's like, I think it's great. I said, no, like, we can make this
Better.
20 times better. And I will say, and I think this is quite common too, you know, after conversations, I have made tweaks. Okay, like, I'm going to add that in, or I might change that page to the end. Like, I think it's very common to, you know, move things around in your pitch deck. But I can very proudly say, like, that is now my work, and that's because I am perfectionist and I want it to be very clear. And I think, like, to like you said, to not to also, because this is also maybe for anyone that's listening that's new to raising, and that I didn't even know that prior to investment calls that you would send the deck to them and they would review it prior to the call.
So it's interesting because I think that, like, people are so situational on what they want. I hate when I meet a founder and they walk me through their deck on the call. I'm like, literally can read, barely, I have dyslexia, but like I can read, and I would prefer to have some level of understanding to get into a call with you to actually dig onto the questions that I need to understand.
Yes.
And I think it's so interesting because the thing that's so hard about even creating content for this space is, like, everything is so situational.
Yes.
Everything is so different. But what do you think that you know now that is kind of generic wisdom that no matter what business that you're building, if it's in tech or let's just say with tech, is applicable to anybody that you wish you had known going into this?
Absolutely. So a few things jump to mind. I think number one is, yes, send the deck prior. To me, also a question that came up is, how long do I allocate? 30 minutes, 30-minute calls with any investors. Do not send them an hour long. Like, these guys are short on time. Let's make this sharp and sweet. I remember my first investors call and I was so nervous, like so nervous. I can even feel the emotions coming back of just like, these people are so smart. Like, they're going to ask me questions and I what if I don't know the answers? And someone said to me, Gab, you are the expert in this space. You know way more than they do in the space that you're working in. You know, leverage that, believe in yourself, have that confidence that if whatever investor you're pitching to, remember that you are the expert in your space. You're educating them. And I think that kind of gave me like this newfound sense of like, you're right. Like, I know fashion sourcing more than anyone in this world, truly. Like, how it works, the industry, how everything. And like, so I think that kind of eliminated some nerves of, what if they ask me questions I don't know? I know every answer that could possibly come up because I know this space better than anyone else. So I think that to me really helped give me that newfound confidence going into those conversations.
Before you continue, I'm going to jump in because this is also something that will help you as you're raising money, and it helps a lot of my founders. I tell them all the time, it's like, you are not asking people for money. You are giving them an opportunity to make money on their money. And like, I think that's sometimes when we forget, it's like, because I also raise money, whether it's a syndicate, you know, we're going out to raise money for, if we ever decide to do that, it's like, you have something so special that inherently somebody else will make money off of. So it's just changing the dynamic of like, you're not asking for money, you're giving somebody an opportunity.
I love that. That needs to be a HSR.
Yeah, we need to make Katie, we need to make that a sticker, like cash for equity rich, and then like, this is not asking for money, it's giving you an opportunity to make money.
That is an absolute definite sticker.
Yeah.
I need to put that next to my HSR.
Katie's like, yes, we'll put that on a sticker. What are 3 words that you would say describe raising money as a first-time solo female founder, non-technical?
Oh, okay. An emotional roller coaster, so a bit of 2 words there. Because there are highs and there's lows. You can have the best call, and then same day you can have a call that completely throws that off. So I'm going to say emotional roller coaster, a bit overwhelming too, of just different, you know, so many conversations going at once. I love Notion. I track everything in Notion for that. Who I've spoken to, what the conversation, etc. It's motivating because there are people that definitely doubt my idea and doubt me even as a founder. I know that for sure. And that motivates me so much more.
Yeah, you're like me.
Yeah, like if you tell me no, I'm like, watch me. Like it's like a drive.
I always like, because people always want to bottle that up, right? They're like, why are you so driven? And it's like, I don't know. Like, it's like it's the making of your life. It's everything from like when you were kids and being bullied, or like for me, I went through like a really bad sexual assault. My first job out of college, that was like, wait, is all people care about me for is what I look like. Like, so it made me work so hard to actually like go for things and prove people wrong.
Yes.
But it is one of those things, like, do you think you're born with that, or do you think that you can teach that?
I think it's elements from your entire life journey.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, elements of that drive probably were formed more around like my last years of high school, of just I love the underdog, right? So I think it's like the classic, like I always want to be I want to be the one that no one expects, but like you just see them like absolutely pop off. And I think that's kind of my high school story too. No one would expect Gab Waller living in Los Angeles, doing what I do. So I think it's formed. And I think it's formed more around like your teenage years.
Yeah. Okay, this is a really good way to segue into this last part of the segment. Do you have a personal mission statement? So I'm going to recommend that you think about it.
Yes.
And then maybe we can do a TikTok when you figure yours out. Because somebody once said this to me when I was like starting my own business, and they were like, what's your why? And I was able to develop a mission statement with Hot Smart Rich, is like to empower and help women know and build their worth.
Yes.
But then it's like, what is my drive? Why do I wake up every single day? When it gets really hard, you keep getting told no's. And for me, it's like really around empowering women to be authentically them fucking selves, like the hottest, smartest, richest version of themselves, without fear of like retribution, by being authentically themselves.
Yes.
And so whenever I feel like I'm personally really struggling with like no's or just obstacles, I'm like, oh, I have a mission statement. This is so much bigger than me, that like the business aside, Hot Smart Rich, like my life, whether it's Hot Smart Rich or something else, like this is what I'm here to do. I recommend any founder that's like really now translating into building a tech business, especially, have a personal mission statement. Think about it.
I love that. That's my homework.
That's your homework. And now you're going to help us with some homework, because I need to do some shopping and some fun things. So we're going to do some rapid fire.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, by the way. I'm going to do a mission statement.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
Yes.
What is the first thing you notice on a girl when you see her walk by with great style?
Her overall like vibe, how she's walking, like
confidence.
Confidence. I look at it all as like a one picture, even from like the hair to the makeup. Like I love an effortless vibe with like styling. So when it's all like an effortless look all over, I love that.
Normally we do a coffee order, but you don't drink coffee or tea. Yeah. So what is your cocktail order?
Skinny margarita.
What is an item on your wish list?
My next bag purchase in the very near future would be a little mini Cali.
What is your information diet must read, book, and newsletter?
Oh, newsletter, hands down, Hot Smart Rich. Like, and that is not, I'm not getting paid to say that. I'm like, I also said to Maggie, I'm like, I'm scared you can see how quickly I open it, because I know 5 p.m. every Sunday it comes into my inbox, and like I'm not really a newsletter girly. I hate to say it. So like my HSR is like my every Sunday. It's my highlight of my week.
I'm obsessed.
And I can truly honestly say that the only other newsletter that I will like open and like read is, there's a journalist called Lauren Sherman. She works for a publication called Puck. And her newsletter I think is called Line Sheet. It's really good fashion updates, insights, and she does some really good research behind it. So that's a newsletter. And then what was the other question? Book. I'm currently reading Diary of a CEO because I love Stephen. Him. He's like so good. Yeah. And then I'm yet to start it, but it's sitting there on my next one, and I've had so many. I posted it on my Instagram and everyone replied being like, this is the best book ever, is Shoe Dog.
Okay, so I listened to your episode with Olivia Perez at the beginning of this year.
Yes.
You said that Gucci was going to be the brand of the year and potentially Miu Miu again. Mm-hmm. True or false now that we're at the end of 2024?
I hate to say I was wrong, but I was indeed wrong.
Okay.
Miu Miu is the brand.
Okay, so you were...
I was 50-50, but Gucci, unfortunately not.
3 words to describe your personal style.
Personal style is chic, sophisticated, but also sexy. Like I like having a sexy element into it, whether it's up or down.
Okay.
But like those 3, I've always thought about my style that way.
If somebody wants to develop a personal style, what should they do to even know what would look good on them, or how they should, like, if they're like, I want to be also like sexy, chic, and sophisticated,
Yes.
what are they doing to do that?
Truly, they're trying pieces on. To me, it always comes back to, what do you feel most comfortable in? What do you feel you're best in?
Okay, last question. What is a brand to watch? Not Roe, Kate, or Totem.
Ooh, I feel like they've already made so much progress, but I feel like they are just going to continue to get bigger and bigger. And because it is an Australian brand, but they have an international presence, is Christopher Esba.
Okay, love. Yeah.
Like the fact, like, you know straight away, but like,
Yeah.
they're actually like a pretty small team, and they're based in Australia,
Yeah.
but like they're making leeway in the US. And like, once you crack the US, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. He shows at Paris Fashion Week now, so I expect a lot more bigger things to come for them.
Wow. Love.
Yeah.
Well, Gab Waller, thank you so much for coming on. Congratulations on everything that you're doing. And I'm sure that we'll have you on again soon.
I can't wait. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Yes.